Yes, 2-5 is here. Sports Reports is ordered. Everywhere you get your podcast. Do me a favor out there. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate. Do all the free things. Do all the good things. So first things first order of business. Just want to let you know we got to tie some things up. Myself and Mr. Logical, Sports Reports is ordered, are going to be going live on Tuesdays and Fridays at 9:30 Eastern. So we'll get that out the way. Change of plans from our regular Monday and Thursday. But tonight I just wanted to hit y'all with a few things real quick. Obviously, a lot going on in the sports world. So let's jump right in. So, of course, it's Thursday night football. So, you got an AFC East battle. The Buffalo Bills traveling down to Hard Rock to play the Miami Dolphins. If you'll recall, Miami came into last season with a lot of hype. And then there was an early season trip to Buffalo. Remember, Trey White got hurt, but Buffalo won that game by 20 points. Fast forward, Buffalo's sitting at 5-6. Miami's on top of the world. Zach Wilson is messing everything up in New Jersey, aka New York. The Patriots were starting to fall a little bit. So it was all there for Miami's taking to win the division, possibly get home field or at least a home playoff game. But no, Buffalo won out, including a Week 18 win at Miami. So Josh Allen against the Dolphins, 10-2 all time. He has 2 TDs in every matchup that he played against them, which is an NFL record for most 2 TD games against one opponent. He's been named Player of the Week 5 different times after games against the Dolphins. So Josh Allen is very happy to see the Dolphins, but if you remember last Sunday, he hurt his non-throwing hand. He pulled out a Herculean effort to come back from behind against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, both teams have already shown this season that they can come back from behind because Miami struggled a bit with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know upon first glance, it's like, oh, hey, they struggled against Jacksonville. Well, I will have you know, Jacksonville needed a very, I don't know what the word is, so I'm going to just say complicated, touchdown pass from Trevor Lawrence to Brian Thomas. It was one of those throws that he probably couldn't make again if he tried it 100 different times. But Jacksonville's defense got pressure on Tua because Miami's offensive line couldn't hold up. And when you look back at the game, it was a very ho-hum performance from an offense that we're used to having these track stars take over. Jalen Waddle had a 63-yard catch. Tyreek Hill had an 80-yard touchdown pass. But there wasn't much to report. Now you got Ryan Mostert out with a chest injury. Devin Achane, has some kind of ankle issue. So it sounds like he's going to be a game time decision, try to work out, see how it goes from there, right? So Buffalo already came into the season without Matt Milano, who got injured late last year. Trey White's in L.A. Jordan Poyer's gone. So now I love Teron Johnson. I was like, hey, this guy in the slot, one of the best nickel corners in the league. He's going to make himself a star this season, or at the very least get some acclaim. And he's out tonight. So, whatever offensive woes Miami had last week, they should find a little easier to navigate against Buffalo tonight. Now, of course, with the coaching matchup, you're looking at offense versus defense. Can Mike McDaniel outmaneuver Buffalo's head coach, Sean McDermott? Buffalo last week struggled with the Cardinals. They held Kyler Murray to 162 yards passing, but he gave them trouble with his legs. And I know the talk in the offseason was Tua lost all this weight, so maybe he'll be a little bit more mobile. I don't think we're going to see that on display. He's not going to suddenly become Lamar Jackson, So, as I look at this game, Buffalo has to keep this score around the same area that Jacksonville did, 20-17 range. I don't think they can do that. Miami is just too talented. And even if Achane can't go, you got some more track stars behind him. Jeff Wilson, Jalen Wright, the rookie from Tennessee. So everywhere you look around the Dolphins roster in the receiver room, whether you're looking at the running backs, they have a relay team that's ready to take the baton at any moment. So this is, I admit, nothing but gut. But I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills to pull the upset tonight. Something along the lines of 24-20. So that puts Buffalo at 2-0, Miami at 1-1. Also tonight, in college football, you got Arizona State coming down here to San Marcos to play against Texas State. Now, Texas State, I picked them in the preseason as my Sun Belt championship representative against Appalachian State. I had Appalachian State winning, but I tried to put it out there early that Texas State is going to be good this year. GJ Kinney is doing a great job coaching down there, and this is a school that just started playing at this level in 2012, and here I am in a position to maybe be able to talk about playoff with them. They're coming off a 39-point win against UTSA down the road from me, and now they're bringing the Wildcats. So if they win this game, look out. The sky's the limit. Maybe a playoff, G5, right? We'll see. Arizona State. I tried to let everybody know on our Big 12 preview episode, Sports Reports is ordered, that Arizona State's going to win 7 games this year. They won 3 last year. They went through a bunch of turmoil. Young head coach Kenny Dillingham came in from Oregon. He was their offensive coordinator. But last year, they had so many offensive line injuries, they had defensive linemen playing offensive line. And they still kept things close. You remember that late Saturday night, they played Washington to a 9-point game where they had a 15-7 halftime lead. You remember they took Colorado down to the wire, Shador doing the thing in the crowd to a 2-win at the time team. So, that just goes to show you that Arizona State comes with talent. So far this season, they got their very first win against an SEC school last week against Mississippi State, 30-23, even though they had a 20-3 lead during a portion of that game. On top of that, they killed Wyoming. And before you laugh, don't forget, Wyoming beat Texas Tech last season and was tied 10-10 with Texas going into the fourth quarter last year. I don't need to remind you how the season ended for Texas last year, right? Or who Texas beat. But Texas State brings in Jordan McLeod, Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. He was the quarterback at James Madison last year. Remember, James Madison was the sweetheart that had us pulling for them. They were undefeated until they lost to Appalachian State live on ESPN, had College Game Day and everything. Arizona State had Jaden Rashada last year, the whole drama central from Miami to Florida to Arizona State. Now he's the backup at Georgia. So now, Arizona State comes in with Sam Levitt at quarterback. But the key to Arizona State is Cam Skepbo against Mississippi State last week. He finished 1 yard shy of Mississippi State. Mississippi State finished with 298 total yards. Cam Skepbo, 297 by himself. So the key is going to be, can Texas State stop him? So you look at the line on this game and you see 1.5, but is the right team favored? I say no. Give me Texas State in the upset tonight. Like I said, Arizona State's going to win 7 games, I believe, this year. But I think San Marcos is going to be jumping tonight. And I think GJ Kinney is a good enough coach to offset the talent difference, which may not be as big as you would suspect. Which takes us to tomorrow night. You got UNLV traveling to play the Jayhawks of Kansas. Of course, you got Kansas playing their games off-site this season. They're playing their smaller games like Linwood, this UNLV game, and one more game at the Sporting KC Soccer Stadium. And then they're playing their bigger games, your Colorados, so on and so forth. They're going to play those games, the Big 12 games, over at Arrowhead, right? But Kansas is coming off a loss. They went out to Champaign and lost to the Illini last week, 23-17, where Jalen Daniels, who I had high hopes for, proved he was human. Now, these two teams did meet last year in the bowl game. Kansas walked away with a 49-36 win, ran the ball up and down the field on UNLV, ran the ball down their throat. And I expect more of the same, even though UNLV is going to put a fight up themselves rushing the ball. So what I really like about this game is the under, because I think both teams are going to run the ball enough that they're just going to melt clock. So, UNLV did pick off Jalen Daniels 3 times last year in that matchup. And I'll be talking about UNLV a little bit later too. But UNLV, right? Let's think about this. Could UNLV be a playoff team? No, not for real. I'm not saying that they're good enough to be a playoff team. But I'm saying that if they win this game, and even with a close loss, you start to make a case, right? Week 1, they went into Houston, knocked off a Big 12 team. So we don't care about the records at the end of the year when you're talking about these smaller G5 schools. People are just going to see that they have a Power 4 win. So they beat Houston already. They got Boise State coming in, so later this year, so, and they get this game. So 2 weeks from now, they get Syracuse. So depending on what happens tomorrow night, UNLV sets themselves up to possibly be able to go on a run. At the very least, we start to think of them as a Mountain West championship game participant. Last year, they made it all the way through, lost to Boise State. So close game. The difference is Kansas's run defense is better than UNLV's run defense, even though Kansas's pass defense leaves a little bit to desire. You know how I feel about Lance Leipold. I think he's hands down a top 5 pound for pound coach in this country. State of Kansas, it's weird because I feel the same way about Chris Kleiman over at Kansas State. So who knew the Sunflower State just sprung coaches like this? So give me the Jayhawks. I'm going to take the Jayhawks in a slightly close game. I'm going to call it something like 28-19. All right. And then finally, tomorrow night, the Big 12 game that does not count in the standings. Last week, we had Utah against Baylor, who had this out-of-conference series home and home scheduled with each other. But now Utah's in the Big 12, so therefore, it didn't count. So that's going to be a funny scenario come the end of the season if you're looking at tiebreakers and you have to look at these games that don't even count in the standings. So the same thing tomorrow night from the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas. The Arizona Wildcats are coming through. So what do I take away from this? Arizona has the best receiver in the country for my money, Tetaroa McMillan, 304 yards against New Mexico. But that's about where my compliments stop for Arizona. I do like Noah Fatita, the quarterback. He's going to be looked at in the NFL draft probably next year. But as I look back at Arizona so far this season, they're 82nd against the run. That's mistake number 1 playing against Kansas State. Mistake number 2, it's in the Little Apple. Then when I look back at it, week 1, you killed New Mexico. Like I said, 304 receiving yards for Tetaroa McMillan. But you gave up 39 points to Mexico. And then I guess last week you called yourself trying to fix it, make it a little bit better. So what did you do? You turned around and you only scored 22 points in a 22-10 win against FCS Northern Arizona. And that game was 13-10 late in the third quarter. Kansas State, on the other hand, went down to New Orleans last week. They went to play Tulane, who a lot of people fell asleep on because Michael Pratt's gone, Willie Fritz is gone, but Tulane is still a damn good team. And it took a bogus offensive pass interference call for Kansas State to get out of there with a win or without going to overtime last week. But Kansas State has J.R. Giddens in the backfield. They picked up Dylan Edwards from Colorado. So far, only 9 carries on the season, but he's averaging over 10 yards per carry. I expect him to have a big game tomorrow receiving out of the backfield. So tomorrow may be his breakout game. Avery Johnson, I came into the season with high hopes. I said, get Will Howard out of here. I think he's better than Will Howard. I think he will be better than Will Howard. Will Howard, of course, took his talents up to Columbus. But Avery Johnson hasn't looked how I thought he would look this season. And I think a part of that is they haven't been running him, using his legs and featuring them the way that I thought they would. So, with that being said, it was just one of those things where I think they might be holding a little bit of the playbook back, and tomorrow night they're going to open up a playbook on Arizona that they haven't shown us this season. So, I think I think Kansas State wins this game. I do think it's closer than the experts think because I think Arizona is going to be able to score as well. Kansas State's defense is usually known for its secondary, not this season so far, but it is early, right? So I don't want to jump to too many conclusions, but I can only go off of what we've seen so far. So give me Kansas State to win that game. So then in the wee hours of the night, as I was finishing up a game of NCAA 25, big matchup, Washington State at Boise State, my created Pac-12. Then I got a message that said, hold on, the Pac-12 is expanding? So here we go, right? Boise State, Colorado State, San Diego State, Fresno State, all coming to the Pac-12 to join Washington State and Oregon State. Now, why is that special to me? Because I just made videos, 4 months ago, talking about how Fresno and San Diego State should be the next call or one of the next calls from a conference. So now you look at the Pac-12 or the two-pack as we call them now. I guess they're the six-pack now. So, what do they do now? Why did they select these teams? I will tell you why. They selected Colorado State because Fort Collins is growing. It's booming right now. And Colorado has enough room as a state for another team. Deion's not going to be at Colorado forever. And whenever he does leave, we can't guarantee that Colorado is going to be anything to talk about anymore. So maybe you can encroach on some of that Denver market and some of that territory. Colorado State just made the NCAA tournament this year, right? San Diego State, you're in Southern California. Remember, you used to have these things called USC and UCLA. So now you want that market back. You want those recruiting grounds back. You want to be able to send your teams down to Southern California to display themselves in front of recruits. Now, San Diego State also just made the Final Four 2 years ago, even though it pissed off the majority of America, but they did it. They got to the Sweet 16 last year. So San Diego State is building programs at the big two sports that are going to compete one day. I like Sean Lewis, their head coach. He was the offensive coordinator at the aforementioned Colorado Buffaloes last season. Remember the drama, him and Deion, he got demoted, so on and so forth. Haven't got off to a good start so far. Lost to Oregon State, got shut out last week, and they're going to be playing against the Golden Bears this week, who won down at Jordan-Hare. So good luck with that. Fresno State, always a tough out. Gave Purdue all they could handle last year. Beat Purdue actually. Then this year they were down 16-10 with 8 minutes left at the Big House to start the season. Fresno State's been known to pop off these big school wins. You know what I mean? Their basketball program's a little far behind. I mean, long ago were the days of Paul George, but Fresno State, just saying, California. All right. And then Boise State, of course, everybody's darling from back in 2008, Statue and Liberty play, hook and ladder against Oklahoma. They were always on the precipice of trying to get into the BCS title game back then. They just always blew it, right? But then I started to think to myself, and they've made their last 2 or 3 NCAA tournaments themselves. So as I started to think about it, who could the new Pac-12 grab to potentially join, right? So I started thinking to myself, the grant of rights in the ACC causing enough drama, right? We talked about Florida State, Clemson, trying to sue to get out of the ACC. North Carolina creeping in the background, not running their mouths yet, but they're watching. They're surveilling the area, or surveying the area. You got Miami, the Hurricanes sitting around listening to the wall, trying to eavesdrop just a little bit. So now we hear all these rumors about, hey, 2027, ESPN has the option to get out of the ACC contract. If they do that, the grant of rights go away, right? The Big Ten contract is up in 2031. We got our eyes on that date because could the Big Ten be looking to expand more, or could we be getting closer to my AFC, NFC, SEC, Big Ten idea? Right? Then 2036 right now is the target date for the grant of rights for the ACC, and that's what Clemson and Florida State are trying to fight, is that if we leave this conference, you ain't getting no more money from us. You can't have it. That's where we are. So as we look at this, Cal, Stanford, and SMU last year joined the ACC. SMU came for free for 9 years. Had to raise $30 million in 4 days to get the invite. They did it. They're in there. They're happy. Cal and Stanford, I don't know how happy they are. They're just happy to have survived and have a place to house their sports right now. But wouldn't it be nice if you could play games in Washington instead of Tallahassee? Wouldn't it be nice if you could go to, say, Fresno or San Diego instead of Dallas? Now, I know Cal and Stanford are snooty with their fingers up, sipping on their tea, thinking that they're better than all these schools because of academics and prestige from that side of the house. But they're smart, so they know that traveling is cheaper and your sports are a little bit better when you travel less and you can stay encroached in your area, so you can play games against San Diego State, Colorado State, these teams that we just mentioned, instead of playing against Louisville, instead of playing against Virginia Tech, who nobody in your state cares about, and some people in those states probably can't even point them out on a map. So from there, Stanford and Cal make sense if they can get out of the grant of rights. But then you turn around, could SMU be a player if the SEC blows up? And if SMU's a player, could that lead to UTSA? Could that lead to Northern Texas? We'll have to wait and see. But my first thought was, where the hell is UNLV? But depending on who you believe, UNLV could be a package with UNR, which is Nevada at Reno, the Wolfpack school of Colin Kaepernick. Maybe that's why UNLV wasn't invited, because there's some state politics going on. What about Air Force? Could Air Force play at that level, depending on if Stanford and Cal come, whatever the case may be? Because the other two academies, Army and Navy, are over in the AAC, which there had been talks in the past between San Diego State, Boise, Air Force, and the AAC. So now that didn't come to fruition, here we are. So now the next question that I have is, what happens to the rest of these Mountain West schools? Nobody wants Wyoming. If you already got Fresno, you probably don't need San Jose State unless you're just trying to regionally pack it, so to speak. Utah State, no thank you. New Mexico, Hawaii, when's the last time they were good, and who wants to travel all the way there? So you look at it, and these Mountain West schools might be stuck. But then you say to yourself, maybe not. Maybe it's time for the Montana schools to shit or get off the pot. That be the Montana Grizzlies and the Montana State Bobcats, who, by the way, Montana State just beat New Mexico to start the season, right? And they were even favored by double digits against a Mountain West team. So that showed you either the state of the Mountain West or the schools that the better schools in the Mountain West are affiliated with, right? So North Dakota State, South Dakota State, just saying, it's now or never at this point. Do you reach out to Conference USA, potentially grab UTEP, who just lost to FCS Southern Utah this weekend? Or do you reach out to somebody like that, or New Mexico State? They're regional fits, but what does that do to your bottom line? So now we got a war going on, MWC versus CUSA, and I didn't even mention Tulane and Memphis or South Florida. Those might be too far for the pack, but stranger things have happened. Cal and Stanford are in the ACC. So there you go. It's going to be a lot to unpack, and we're going to have to see what happens, but I'm here for it. The problem with the Pac-12 in general, or, just a Western conference in general, is that there just aren't many Western teams to select from. And, oh, by the way, I forgot to mention Mountain West, UC Davis, Sacramento State, maybe. I'm a sicko. What do you want from me? All right. So finally, we'll wrap up tonight. And I normally don't like to get into politics and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to do it for a quick second. So all season long, or actually 2 years ago, the story, LSU against Iowa. Remember that? Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I remember that. I know you do too. So then you turn around. Last year, they meet in the NCAA tournament. Caitlin gets her revenge. Now it's time to go to the WNBA. What's going to happen now? Caitlin Clark is a phenomenon. She's a supernova. She took over the league, took the league by storm. You got arenas or teams that were getting 5,000 fans to watch their games are now having to rent out 17 to 20,000 seat arenas because of the demand of Caitlin Clark. So most of this season, Caitlin and Angel from my city of Baltimore, were in a tight Rookie of the Year race that was only tight by media. I think Caitlin was the Rookie of the Year and has been for quite some time, but that's neither here nor there for what we're talking about right now. But as the season was going on, as things were building, the WNBA was trying to climb itself out of debt and out of a hole now that they have some transcendent personalities. They've always had great players, but now they have transcendent personalities and personalities that demand a following. But we just couldn't act right. We couldn't just say, hey, this is so great. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark at the same time, LeBron and Carmelo, Magic and Bird. We couldn't just enjoy the moment and enjoy the basketball, build a rivalry, let them go back and forth on the court at each other. No, we had to take it upon ourselves to have these stupid wars on X about who was better, about, oh my God, they're attacking Caitlin. Oh, Angel's a thug and all this other coded language, right? So earlier today, Taylor Swift came out and endorsed, and I never thought I would say Taylor Swift's name, but Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris for president of the United States. Caitlin Clark liked the post. So what did we see? People on Instagram, I'm never wearing your jersey again. I'm burning this. I'm burning that. I hate Caitlin Clark. How could Caitlin Clark do this? I didn't know Caitlin Clark was woke. And therein lies the problem. This is sports. Nobody cares about your feelings. Nobody cares about what you feel. When we saw a guy kneel for the national anthem, you told him and us, keep politics out of sports. So don't bring it in now because your darling, your golden child, your princess happened to have a different opinion than what you had. Now, I got mad at Caitlin myself, a couple of months ago because she was doing the interview and she was making the comment about, I can't control what people do with my name. And she's absolutely right. But that ain't the right approach. That ain't the right thing to say. Your name stands for something. The same people that were talking about don't disrespect my flag sat in silence when the KKK had that flag in the background in their videos. So miss me with all that. We thought you tried to present that it was about basketball. I just think Caitlin is a better player. I just think that Caitlin is going to be the one that lifts the WNBA from the doldrums and put it on a different level. And while she has, at least for this season, I've been questioning what happens next year. Who's the next? Because Juju's got to wait a few more years before she can hit. Is Paige Buecher's going to continue this lineage of the new WNBA superstar? Who else we got? But anyway, but we were right all along because we said, you know what? Y'all are just holding on to Caitlin Clark because she's the anti-Angel. But the difference was we were talking in a basketball sense. Because Angel Reese was the Ben Wallace / Dennis Rodman, grab all the rebounds, play defense. Caitlin was the Steph Curry pulling up from 30, crossing over people, beautiful dimes. That's what we were talking about. But y'all were talking about something else because y'all were bringing the politics into the sports. Y'all were treating Angel differently. I ain't going to even make it racial for this conversation. But if you know, you know. Sorry, The jig's up. We now know the truth about you, and we were right all along. So, yo, I am 2-5. This has been 2-5 Daily. Sports Reports is ordered. Myself and Mr. Logical tomorrow night. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the good things. Do all the free things, do all the good things. Peace.